Hi, I'm Liron Cohen.
And I'm Mimi Torchin.
And you're listening to Lady Parts TV, the podcast.
Whee!
Hello, hello, hello.
Greetings and salutations.
Again, that's your new thing.
That's my podcast.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another podcast. We're starting with the stats, and they're actually pretty good today. Mm-hmm. We tallied 17 primetime shows, out of which written or co-written by women, 10, which is 59%.
Excellent.
And directed, 65%.
11 women, right?
Yeah, again, thanks to, in part, to one of the shows that we'll talk about later today. So, let's start with a heavy subject.
We're going to continue with heavy subjects.
I know, right? It is kind of a...
It's a pretty heavy day.
It's a pretty heavy day, but it's pretty good. It's all pretty good stuff. So, we're going to start with a movie review. We watched the documentary Whitney.
Oh, my God.
This week. And, oh, man...
I mean, it's there's a couple of, new bits of information, but there's a lot more footage. And,
well, actually, there are some really big, there's small, it's not many of them, but the new pieces of information are humongous.
Yes, but even without those new pieces of information, it's a killer. It's just... It's,
literally.
Yeah, literally. It's just, a life of magnificence and genius just... wasted and broken.
But I think this, we all know how Whitney got to where she got, but I think this movie does a good job at explaining the reasons for some of the way that her life took, the path that her life took. And also very sad is Bobby Christina, her daughter. So tragic,
even more tragic than you could have known or imagined.
Yeah, I didn't know how much they were going to address it in the movie. And you know what? I at some point I thought they would address it more, but then I realized, you know what? They didn't need to. What they showed just showed
just enough
the inevitable. This is, by the way, written and directed by Kevin MacDonald. He was given free access pretty much by the estate, and that's why we were in advance. We had been worried that would mean that it would be sanitized, that it would be...
They would leave out the Robin Crawford
right. Not only did they not leave it out, they added other things that some of the people in the estate, including Whitney Houston, didn't even know until this movie happened. Some of the people who were interviewed, who were very close to Whitney, both her family members, friends, people she worked with, were extremely candid.
Bobby Brown, who was not candid.
He was just
showed himself
repulsive
up
as
to be
always.
the horrid man he is.
And her assistant, Mary, who was probably the most moving of all of them. She was the one who found her.
She loved her so much.
This is, of course, you'll hear music that will just crush your heart even more because it juxtaposes the great talent and beauty with the darkness.
The tragic life.
The darkness
just
and
a tragic life. And a life, again, that somehow or other seemed inevitable. I don't know why. It started off bright.
But
many
different elements.
So many different elements. I don't think she had a chance.
Yeah. It reminded me a lot of the Amy Winehouse documentary. There were some parallel stories, which is interesting. If you haven't seen that one, by the way, also another one to watch.
Absolutely, another talent, but really Whitney, cut off in her prime.
But Amy Winehouse, I think not many of us felt. Whitney, I think a lot of us felt that she was
connected
a very part of our lives. She touched a lot of us. It's a very important movie about Whitney, and I was very pleasantly surprised as to how good, effective, and not shying away from the important subject.
And it's interesting. It showed quite a few parallels to Michael Jackson, to a lot of these stars with these great talents who ended up tragically. There were a lot of things about them that
and apparently they had a bond because of that, which they would sometimes meet and just sit in silence just because they were the only ones who could get it.
Yes, they didn't even talk to each other. They just sort of drew strength and comfort from each other. Very interesting.
Very, very sad. So the Whitney documentary is right now out around the U.S. and also around the world in some countries. So do see it if you can, and
especially if you were a fan.
Especially if you're a fan, it's a must. But be prepared to
have your
not
heart
be able
broken.
to speak for a few hours afterwards.
Yeah. It's one of the few things I've seen where a lot of people stay. They played music throughout the credits.
But I think also people just couldn't.
A lot of people just sat in the theater until the lights came up.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, from heavy to heavy.
To heavy. HBO, Sunday, 9 p.m., brand new series, Sharp Objects, which we have been waiting for. It's from the Gillian Flynn novel. It's starring Amy Adams, Patricia Clarkson.
It's from Marty Noxon, who also did
Marty Noxon, exactly.
And, Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce.
Gillian Flynn wrote Gone Girl. There's more men behind the scenes than there usually are in a Noxon project, but that's okay because the women are front and center in the story.
And HBO is usually kind of male heavy, so
yes.
This is Amy Adams' first TV thing, right?
No, she did something else in television, which is why she was kind of shy about doing another one because I think it wasn't that successful.
No, it's true. She doesn't do a lot of television though, and so she got her hands on
this was
character.
something that she felt that she could really do justice to, and really wanted to sink her teeth into. And also, I think it was directed by Jean-Marc Vallée. I think that something that really probably spurred her on was Big Little Lies, with all those big names.
His last project,
and the great success it had. Yeah. I felt that she. I'm sure that she felt this was something.
She's hoping that it's Emmy and Golden Globe.
But let me tell you, as much as I am already hooked and really love it, it is a very depressing show. It is dark. It is dark, literally. There's a lot of darkness. The way it's shot, it's about a serial killer. Amy Adams plays a reporter from St. Louis who goes back to her small town, Wind Gap, Missouri, which is like something frozen in time. She has a very contentious, horrible relationship with her hideous mother, Patricia Clarkson, and a sort of seems like ineffectual stepfather, played by Henry Czerny, who I like very much.
Conrad from Revenge, in case you don't know.
Yes, exactly. And also from the lesbian movie Night Must Fall.
When Night is Falling.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And a new young woman plays her half sister, Eliza Scanlon.
I think she's Australian, by the way, because I saw the.
There's got to be an Australian in everything you watch, because God knows there aren't enough American women or girls or boys or men to play these parts in SAG-AFTRA in America. Only about
you must
50,000.
You must understand. Mimi, as a former actress, understands the plight of actors and how every role is fought over.
Yes. Now, I love Australians. I love Brits. I love them all. But some of these parts that they play, I don't understand why they couldn't.
Anyway, we're
going to
talk about an Australian series pretty soon.
Anyway, there's a serial killer, and she has to go back home. Her Miguel Sandoval, her editor, she works for a newspaper in St. Louis, sends her back home way against her will to cover this story. He says, you can cover it from the inside. You know the people. And she goes back
confront
to confront demons in her past. She has a very dark past.
Well, and when you see her self-destructive behavior, then you have to think, well, she must have really big demons.
Really big demons. Anyway, it's fabulous. Amy Adams is already so superb. Patricia Clarkson just makes my skin crawl. Nobody can play these dragon ladies the way Patricia Clarkson can, because she does it in a passive-aggressive way. And
also Elizabeth Perkins is in it. We didn't see much of her in the first episode.
She's going to have a little background here.
Now, I'm going to give a little bit of an ambivalent review of this.
Okay, well, I'm giving an ambivalent review, too, which is that I find it difficult to watch.
That's what I was about to say.
It's not fun. Big Little Lies had some heavy themes to it, but it was done with a great deal of humor. It was in Southern California.
And
it was always bright and light. It had that beautiful friendship and sisterhood between those women. This is dark. There's very little love in this movie, and there's series. Sorry, it feels like a movie. It's
because it's Amy Adams too. Yeah. Well, it's not HBO. It's not television.
It's television.
It's
HBO, and that becomes more and more.
To me, also one of the reasons that it's so hard, and I find maybe it's just me, but when I watch TV shows or movies where the main actor, who's supposed to be the person I relate to, does so many physically destructive things to them. I find it very hard. I feel like physically ill. She drinks so much. She smokes so much. She also cuts, but we haven't
come to that yet, which I think Sharp Objects has. I think the title has something to do with that. But I have to say something. Let me just veer 1 second away from this thing. I have never seen more drinking than I have seen on television in almost every series we watch. Yeah. Those darling girls in the bowl tie.
Be it in a destructive way or in a socialized way.
I mean, those little girls drink like fish. They're always hungover. They're all positive, lovely girls. I love them all, but they are alcoholics in the making.
There's a lot of
every
drinking.
show practically that you watch is filled. Oh, it's time for wine. People drink. It's like they start their day with a glass of, with a vodka and orange juice, and it goes downhill from there.
Now, we are not drinkers.
No, we're not
so
drinkers.
So this seems
right.
abnormal to us, and I think it's abnormal, period, but it might be more common now than we even realize.
But just take a look.
Yeah,
take a notice as you watch television.
If you think it's normal.
How much drinking there is on TV these days.
Yeah. Anyway, Sharp Objects is on HBO on Sundays. We only saw one episode, so we have to see where this is going. But it's definitely a show of a high caliber.
Yeah, I think that you have to give it a go and try to stick with it. Now, here's something that we happened on quite by accident. We were watching something on Netflix, and you know how they always, when it's over, they sort of pop up something maybe that might be recommended for you. And this certainly was. It's an Australian series, an ACTA winner, a thriller, a political thriller called Secret City, starring the delicious Anna Torv, also as a reporter. And Jackie Weaver is in it. Dan Wiley, who I don't know if you know him or not, but he's very excellent. And Damon Harriman, who you will know from a lot of things, but mostly I remember him from
Flesh and Bone. Which, by the way, if you haven't seen the Stars show, Flesh and Bone,
you must. It's a ballet drama, and it's just splendid. This is Damon, by the way, plays a trans woman, and it's a very interesting portrayal. This is a very deep and dark
and confusing as hell.
Story, but it's very compelling. It's quite fascinating. It really shows the nasty underbelly of politics. No matter where you are, politics suck, man.
Yeah.
They are dirty. They are about control.
It's also about diplomacy in many ways.
Diplomacy. It's about the right, again. The right wing. I don't mean the right as opposed to the wrong.
Terrorism and how it's used.
The right is generally wrong. And
I also want to say that even though I'm not entirely happy about the fact that the trans woman is played by a man. The relationship, both the portrayal of the trans woman and the relationship between her and Anna Torv, the Anna Torv character, I found very original.
Very original, very beautiful, very fascinating. And I have to say that I loved his portrayal. I loved that there were no apologies for the fact that he looked totally like a woman and talked like a man. And the other thing that I found that I loved about this is there was not a single person in his life.
In her life.
In her life. I'm thinking of the actor. That's why I keep calling him
part of the problem, right. By the way.
In her life, that shows even the slightest interest in the fact that she's a trans
and
woman.
She had a high security clearance job.
In something like the NSA, but not just a listener, somebody high up.
Right.
And it's kind of a scary movie.
Yes.
There's a lot of violence in it, but it's really, really fascinating. And the first season is on Netflix, 6 episodes.
We kind of buried the lead. The second season they're working on now.
I didn't bury the lead. I think this is, now we're coming to this. Okay. I don't think the lead is.
I think a lot of people will
Danielle Cormack is in the second season.
I think a lot of people just became a lot more interested.
Yes, but that's not, this is not called Daniel Cormack stars in the second season of Secret City. This is the nugget to get you to make sure that if for any reason at all you don't like this, and you will, you stick around for the second season, because according to IMDb, she's in all 6 episodes of the second season.
And by the way, the show has tons of women writing and directing it, and this is the main reason why we had the good stats that we had this week, because we binged this on this show.
Really, and it was very bingeable.
Yeah, very. For some reason, again, even at the end of it, I was still confused about exactly what happened.
All these political thrillers,
but it was really, really compelling.
Very, very, very layers upon layers upon layers. But I really, really recommend it. Season 1 now is on Netflix.
Yep.
Secret series starring...
Secret City.
Oh, why do I want it?
It's not a secret series. It's a secret
I
city.
either call it Hidden City or Secret City. It takes place in Canberra, which I believe is the capital
I wouldn't know.
of Australia. And
unfortunately, I do need to find out.
They're always talking about how cold it is there, which I didn't think there was any place in Australia that was cold. But anyway, I recommend it. Watch it.
Now, we have to address...
Oh, my God. Here we go again. Dark upon dark upon dark upon dark.
We have talked about it a lot before, but we're just going to talk about specifically the second season finale of The Handmaid's Tale. And I just want to say that show rocks my world.
Oh, my God.
It rocks my world.
It just, this season took off where the book ended. And with Margaret Atwood's blessing and her cooperation, they continued with this second season, which to me is seamless. I think I agree. It feels...
the same voice, the same tone.
It feels of one piece with the first season, although there's a lot more hope in this season. People said it was darker. Mm-hmm. The review said it was going to, take you down the rabbit's hole.
Well, the beginning of it was the first couple of episodes.
And there are many, many terrible things that happen, but there is a lot more light. There's a lot more resistance and rebellion. And
many more layers.
And we see more layers and more sides of the characters. Yvonne Strahovski.
Now, I wanted to say next week we're going to have a podcast dedicated to talking about the Emmy nominations, which, as you can imagine, we have quite a bit to say about. But the one thing that I will say now, I'm so happy that Yvonne Strahovski, by the way, also an Aussie,
which we didn't know. She's, again,
flawless
has a
accent.
Perfect accent, and everything I've ever seen her in is American. So.
She was recognized for her amazingly nuanced, layered, complex portrayal.
So much so. I felt last year also she was a standout, but this year she is really central. Oh. And I have to say she's up against Thandie Newton.
She's up against a lot of all the categories, all the women's categories.
The women's categories are all
impossible.
Killers. And but when I was listening, when Liron was reading me the Emmy nominations, all I was waiting for was to hear if Yvonne was nominated, and she was. So anyway, if you're watching the first season, if you're watching this second season, you're certainly not going to miss the finale, but just be prepared for something that's going to be extremely satisfying, and you're going to be very excited to see where it's going to go next season.
Oh, I want to watch it again because I was so stressed out about where it's going to go.
My God.
I kind of couldn't breathe throughout the episode, and now I want to watch it again when I'm able to breathe.
There's a lot of surprises.
I just want to say that also one of the reasons that this season was to me not as dark as the first season was because there was a lot more sisterhood, and there was a lot more sisterhood among the ranks. Before we saw there were the red, the gray, the blue. All of a sudden there's a little
mixing
melding and mashing.
And it's towards a sort of a common end.
Yes, because I think that they're. I've always said that historically wise, women tend to stick more with their men rather than with their sisters. So they will stick to race, they will stick to class, they will stick to all those rather than to sisterhood. But what we're seeing now is that they're finally understanding that they have much more in common with their sisters.
Absolutely, of
rather
course.
than their men.
And Serena really finds out that she's not who she thought she was.
Right, and what she created
and
was
what
a
she
monster
created, since she was quite the architecture of a lot of this. Yeah. That she created a monster, and she wants to you know.
Well, it's just, I can't believe we have to wait a whole year now for season 3, even though this show is so hard, especially in this reality.
Especially in this reality.
I find that I need it, especially because there is more Resistance this year. It kind of gives me this satisfying...
and also, it's an absolutely top drawer, brilliant production from every aspect of it is just every hour is like a movie.
Yeah.
And the acting, small parts, large parts, knockout. You can't go wrong with this show unless you don't have the stomach for it. And some people don't.
Yes. Again, especially in this reality, it hits close to home. Now, if you haven't seen it yet and you've been waiting for it to be over so you can binge on it, which I totally understand. I don't know how we managed to wait a week between episodes.
Well, that's because we watched we waited and binged about the first 8, yes.
Now, go and watch everything and let us know what you thought of it.
And if you haven't watched it yet, watch it. Start from season 1.
Of course.
And you'll do what I did. I watched 7 seasons of Game of Thrones in 2.5 weeks.
This is 2.
Yeah. No, but I mean, you will be compelled.
Now, before we let you go, we just want to quickly revisit a show that we have talked about before, but we talked
many
about
times.
No, just once.
Really?
Yes.
I
but
feel
we
like
talked
we talk about it all
after.
the time.
Well, we talk amongst ourselves. We talked about it after the first episode, and we didn't really know much about it yet. But I just want to reiterate how wonderful it is. It's Pose. It's on FX on
another Ryan Murphy brilliant.
It's so wonderful. It's centered on the trans community of color.
A special segment of the trans community of color.
Right, in New York City in the 80s during the AIDS crisis. And I just want to say, MJ Rodriguez, who plays Blanca, especially, but also India Moore, who plays Angel.
Oh, I just love Angel.
These two, and most of the people on the show are newcomers. Hi, Lulu. These two really have gone into my heart. But everybody is wonderful, and it's such a good show, full of heart, and that tackles really important subject matters.
And it isn't completely the trans community. There are gay boys.
Yes, and part of this is
straight
also
people.
Right. Part of this is also just also addressing the 80s when all of a sudden
the AIDS crisis was really starting to,
and the 80s when money and riches and status and class, which all those things kind of came to a head.
Yes, and this hidden, fascinating world of the balls.
Yeah. But really, what to me is the show is full of heart.
Yes,
it's full of heart.
It is. It's
a wonderful
sweet,
show.
loving show.
So do check it out, Pose, and go with it.
It's kind of a good antidote to everything else we talked about.
Right? Yes, it's the only light at the end of this tunnel, and it's full of AIDS. So
well, it's not full of AIDS, but AIDS is certainly a spectrum that hangs, a spectral presence that hangs over everybody's head.
So next week, as we've said, we're going to have a special podcast dedicated to the Emmy nominations. If you want to write to us ahead of time, ladypartstv@gmail.com, and let us know what you thought of the Emmy nominations. We'll be happy to include some of your opinions. So thank you for joining us. Go watch everything we told you about.
Every single thing. Watch it at least once.
And we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.